This video is sponsored by Maps International. Maps International is a leading online seller of stunning wall maps, scratch prints, and map gifts. Check out some amazing offers through this Christmas. And over this Black Friday weekend, they've got up to 60% off. The links to their site are in the video description below. Today, we are back into countries that don't exist anymore. So let's get right into it. First, the biggest of them all, the Soviet Union. This is for sure the most well-known of this list. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, was officially in existence from 1922 to 1991. In name, it was a union of several national republics, all of them following the socialist/communist ideals, but in reality, the government and economy of it were highly centralized. The Communist Party was the only one allowed, and the ruling party as well, with its capital in Moscow, Russia, which was the largest of the Soviet republics and one which effectively ruled all the others, which were pretty much puppet regimes of the Russians. Its size was significantly larger than current Russia, being in control of the Baltic countries, Belarus, Ukraine, Crimea, the Caucasus region, Kazakhstan, and other istans in that region. 80% of its population lived in the western part of the country, near or inside Europe, a total of 288 million people in 1989, the world's third largest population at the time. Its roots date back to the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, being officially formed in 1922 with the Treaty of the Creation of the USSR. Today, the Russian Federation is seen as the successor of the Soviet Union, which makes sense since they were the ones in control. All the way in the US, Texas. Today, it's still known as the Lone Star State, but Texas had a time when it was actually fully independent. The Republic of Texas existed for about 10 years, from 1836 to 1846, and their citizens were known as Texians. Its origin is actually related to Mexico. In 1836, the Texas province of Mexico declared its independence, but the Mexicans refused to recognize it. The US did, but didn't want to annex the territory, at least not yet. Territory disputes with Mexico marked the entire existence of Texas independence. In 1945, they finally joined the US, who inherited their disputes with Mexico, leading to the Mexican-American War of 1846. Then we have the Duchy of Schleswig, sort of in between Germany and Denmark, although since 1920 its territory has been divided between these two. It existed from 1058 to 866, a pretty long lifespan for a duchy. Its power and significance as a region came from the strategic point in which it is located, a passing point between the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, an important connection for the trade between Russia and Europe. Its importance is demonstrated by the fact that a few years later, in 1895, the Kiel Canal was built in the region, connecting the two seas. And the trading importance of this place goes way back. During the early Viking Age, Aitabu, Scandinavia's largest trading outpost, was located in this same region. In fact, some people say that it was this trading center, in addition to a set of fortifications known as Danwerk, which, through its expansion, led to the establishment of the Danish state. Today, it's part of Denmark and Germany. A little to the south, in Germany itself, we have the Confederation of the Rhine. Its official name was the Confederate States of the Rhine, because it was a confederation of client states of the French Empire at the time, created after Napoleon defeated Austria and Russia in battle, lasting from 1806 to 1813. It served sort of as a buffer state between France and Prussia and Austria, but was obviously used by France to attempt to increase its power. However, French rule depended on their military success, and after Napoleon's defeat in Leipzig in 1813, the Confederation was dissolved. All the states became independent, but eventually came back together later in history to form the North German Confederation, the German Confederation, and then leading up to Germany as we know it today. So essentially, it was an attempt at German unification before its time, but with secondary objectives other than the national unity. Next, another union of republics, technically, Yugoslavia, which technically existed under three realities, if you will. First, as a kingdom, from 1918 to 1941. Then as a socialist federation from 45 to 92. And then as a federation between Serbia and Montenegro from 1992 to 2006. The kingdom was formed with the union of various recently independent states from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Initially, it was called the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, ruled by a royal family of Serbian origin. They fled the country when it was invaded by the Axis in World War II. After the war, an Allied-friendly regime was instaured, finally being given back its independence in 1944. In 1945, the king was deposed, and the monarchy came to an end, with the creation of a socialist regime. Initially, they sided with the Soviet Union during the Cold War, but then they followed a neutrality policy of more moderation. Eventually, the federation was dissolved due to the many differences between the member countries and various nationalities. We all know what a powder keg the Balkans have been in history. Today, the territory is divided between the former member countries. Next, the Ottoman Empire, also known as the Turkish Empire and later on just as Turkey. It existed from 1299 to 1922. Ruling a lot of Southeast Europe like the Balkans, Greece, the region of Turkey, the Middle East, and even stretching as far as Algeria and Tunis at some points. It was founded in the 13th century in Anatolia by the Oghuz tribal leader Osman I. After expanding their power in that region, they crossed over to Europe in 1354, conquering Constantinople and ending the Byzantine Empire in 1453. An interesting fact is that after this conquest, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II claimed the title of Caesar of the Roman Empire, so one could maybe argue that Turkey is technically the descendant of the Eastern Roman Empire, although Greece probably wouldn't be too happy about that. Having Constantinople as its capital, it was the center of all trade and interactions between the East and Western world for over 6 centuries. Its descent was consequence of a lot of things, like falling behind the military developments of their rivals, the Habsburgs and the Russians. Loss after loss led to their diminishing as an empire. They attempted an alliance with Germany in order to not be so isolated, but that led to their participation of the losing side of World War II. After the war, their Middle Eastern territories were divided amongst France and Britain, and the monarchy came to an end. The Republic of Turkey was born, lasting until today. Back to America, we have the United Provinces of Central America. It was formed by what is today Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica, as well as a small part of Mexico. After Central America declared independence from the Spanish, most of the territory was annexed by the Mexican Empire in 1822. However, parts of Central America formed this federative republic, remaining independent after 1823. However, the union wasn't able to last. From 1838 to 1840, a civil war took place. There was no peaceful resolution which allowed the maintaining of the union. So after the war, each country became independent as we know them today. Going south from there, we have the Rio Grande Republic in South America, or the Republic of Rio Grande. It coincides roughly with the territory of the Brazilian state which uses that same name. It existed from 1836 to 1845 and was proclaimed by General Antonio de Souza Neto after a victory in a Republican uprising against the Brazilian Empire. Most people say that its objective was never to actually be independent in their own country, but rather to demonstrate their dissatisfaction about high taxes collected by the imperial government. However, they had a constitution written up and had their independence recognized by Britain, France, and Uruguay. In 1839, it even formed a confederation with another seceding republic in Brazil, Juliana. A fun fact about it is that in only 9 years, the country had 5 different capitals. I guess they just couldn't decide. After a few years of war with the Brazilian Empire, peace was achieved, as well as reintegration with Brazil through the Ponte Verde Treaty. Also in South America, but in the north, Grand Colombia. From 1819 to 1831. The territories of Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, North Peru, Western Guyana, and parts of Brazil were united under one country and one flag, the Republic of Colombia. It was at the time a powerful nation. John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State of the US, claimed that it was one of the world's most prestigious and powerful countries. Interestingly, it coincides almost perfectly with the former Spanish domain of the Viceroyalty of New Granada from 1717 to 1821, which might have contributed to the independent union that followed. Country dissolved in the late 1820s, separating into the countries that we know today. And to finish this video, we go back to Europe, to the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, the largest Italian state before unification, a union between the Kingdom of Sicily and the Kingdom of Naples in southern Italy. It existed from 1816 to 1861, only disappearing to form Italy. It had two capitals, the capitals of the two former kingdoms, in Naples and in Palermo. Despite holding a somewhat large portion of the Italian territory, its power and economy were not very big. Most of its activity was agricultural, and the Catholic Church owned up to 65% of the land by the time it was created. The descendants of its 8.7 million inhabitants now live in Italy, although after the Italian integration, many of them left for America. And those are 10 countries that don't exist anymore. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you want me to keep making these with any suggestions that you might have. Remember to check out Maps International in the description below, and I will see you in the next video.